No, they shouldn't make the trains come faster. What they should do, they should change the announcements so people change what they think, and that'll change what they feel, right? Instead of being on there and being like, during peak hour, trains come every 15 minutes. What they should be saying is like, in parts of India, trains come every 2 days.
For the Stoics, we don't really have control over all that much that lies outside of ourselves. What we do have control over, however, is how we think about things and whether we desire or reject, whether we choose one way or another, what we give assent to and what we say, no, I'm not going to go along with that. And as Michael points out, it's up to us when we have thoughts in our head, and we always come stocked with a whole bunch of thoughts before we even start thinking about how many thoughts we have stuck in our head. It's up to us to decide whether we're going to agree or disagree with those thoughts, which means that we also have to bring them before us and under a kind of scrutiny if we want to make any progress in dealing with them. And then once we've done that, we can consider whether those thoughts, whether those judgments, whether those opinions about the way things are and about the way things should be, whether they are reasonable or whether we need to change our perspective to make it more reasonable. So that allows us to develop a sense of perspective and proportion about things. If we change the way in which we see a situation, and how it affects us and what our rights are or duties are or expectations are, then we're going to change our emotional responses to those situations. What could, in fact, if we're thinking about it one way, be an occasion to be quite angry, and angry in a way that won't fix anything, like the guy getting upset about the plane or the train or any other, getting bumped by somebody, can be turned into an occasion to feel calm or even to feel happy about the fact that one managed not to lose one's temper. What might make us sad or might make us fearful doesn't necessarily have to do that for us. And this is one of the most liberatory you might say, principles or features of Stoic philosophy, one that it shares in common with some other approaches I would point out as well. And it's that we do have some measure of control over what we feel. We're not totally helpless in the face of our emotions. Now, that doesn't mean that we can simply snap our fingers and not feel what it is that we're already in the process of feeling, because we have reasons for feeling what we do. They may not be good reasons, but there is some sort of process by which we arrived at thinking, I ought to feel this way. And if we can bring that into scrutiny, if we can become conscious of what's going on, and it may help to have some principles from Stoic philosophy to do this, we can gradually change the way in which we feel and respond to situations so we can be happy rather than being sad. Now, one thing that does come up that I should point out in Michael's joke here is that from a Stoic perspective, we really can't control how other people think or feel. That lies outside of the bounds of our own control. That doesn't mean, of course, that we can't predict with some degree of probability that if we do say things in a different way, for instance, give them a little bit of perspective about trains and how often they're on time around the world, that it might not help other people to develop a good sense of perspective. But we'll probably always still have that one guy shouting at the top of his lungs that it should be coming every 10 minutes rather than every 15 minutes. And there's not an awful lot that we can do about it. But, if people are reasonable, and people are at least reasonable about half the time, I would imagine, then we can slowly steer them by how we say things in public towards thinking about things in more productive and less counterproductive or destructive ways, in ways that at least keep them calm and don't make them upset. So, some of the examples that Michael has facetiously provided us here in the guise of jokes are actually quite brilliant. If you want people in general, as you might say, a mass, to think differently about what it is that they're experiencing and to respond differently, frame it in a different way. Now, that's something that we can certainly choose to do in our own life, but we can try to do that for other people as well.